Yo, what's up, guys? It's your boy Bernie here along with Pete.
Yo!
And today, guys, we're here to talk about the Jimmy Butler telenovela saga with the Minnesota Timberwolves. We know that it's continued on from the summer to where we're now in the 2 weeks into the NBA season. So we're just going to start off with a question with you, Peter. Who do you think is the most responsible? Who do you think is hurt as most by this whole situation?
Who is hurt the most by this? I want to say at this point in his career, it's going to be Karl Anthony Towns. That's just my opinion, because I think he's already looked at as this supreme talent in the NBA. But Jimmy Butler seems to people seem to like him in the NBA. Other stars seem to like him. I think he's really good friends with Kyrie, who's friends with everybody really. So I think if you have Jimmy Butler, who's very outspokenly saying this guy's a punk, he doesn't care about winning and he's lazy.
Right.
I think that reflects very poorly upon him throughout the whole league, and it kind of sends these ripples amongst all the friend groups in the NBA. And then it does damage to anybody. Once Jimmy does leave, it does damage to a guy like Kawhi, for example. Just throw it out there, right? Right. Why would he want to come play with a guy who's lazy and doesn't want to win, reportedly or supposedly? So I would say it's him, and not only that, but it's really starting to reflect very poorly on his play as well. And if you look, maybe we'll put this video in here or link it somewhere, but there was a shot that Karl Anthony Towns took at the end of a game a couple days ago where he just fired off a three-pointer from mid-court for no reason, and it was short by feet, right? And I think that is the kind of thing where you can tell this guy's in his head in the moment, not playing very well, and Jimmy Butler is just kind of running Minnesota. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to agree with you with at least one point with that is Karl Anthony Towns is definitely hurt by this. The way that his play is right now, I just don't recognize the guy that last year most GMs said that they would build their team around this guy. Now it's we don't want anything to do with him. We want Giannis or Joel Embiid. So it's really disappointing to see that Karl Anthony Towns isn't going over what Jimmy Butler's saying, proving Jimmy Butler wrong and saying, you know what, let me do it. Let me become the man. Let me show you why I'm the most talented player on the team and why I deserve to get the paycheck that I did. But at the same time, I think the one that's hurt most by this is Tom Thibodeau.
Okay.
And the reason why I say Tom Thibodeau is because he doesn't want to trade Jimmy Butler. He wants to keep this whole team together, but he knows that it's a fractured locker room with Andrew Wiggins being the way that he is, the most annoying player now in the NBA. Karl Anthony Towns in his own head because of Jimmy Butler. And then Jimmy Butler just creating these rifts and factions in the Minnesota Timberwolves locker room. It was cool and all that Jimmy Butler had that team meeting with everybody, but it looked like it didn't work because they're not playing as well as they should, and they're suffering for it. And that's because Tom Thibodeau should not have the powers of both player operations and being a head coach.
Never works.
I feel like that never works in any aspect. I mean, look at Doc Rivers and the LA Clippers when they had their super team.
Stan Van
Gundy. It just doesn't work because Tom Thibodeau just brings in old Bulls players that he used to coach and said, you know what, you guys can fit in here. Meanwhile, they're not doing the job that they need to do. So I think Tom Thibodeau in the end, to me, is the one that hurts most by this because now he's going to have the perception of he might not get hired again for another job.
He might not.
As a head coach, I should say.
Yeah. I think the reason that I wouldn't say Tibbs is the same reason I wouldn't say Wiggins. And maybe this is me copping out to the question in the sense that, I don't think the Jimmy Butler thing hurts Tibbs more than his poor coaching hurts his chances of getting another job. And it's the same way I say, Wiggins, right, is just so inconsistent.
Right.
That, this Jimmy Butler saga doesn't really... it does affect him, but it doesn't really change my perception of him personally, because I already don't think very highly of him as a player. So, whether or not Jimmy Butler likes Andrew Wiggins or not doesn't really matter to me, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't think Wiggins is very good based on his contract, especially. Anyway, and with Tibbs, I don't think he's really meant to coach in this fast-paced NBA.
Yeah, but I just think with this, Tom Thibodeau per se, I don't like the fact that he is old school with this thinking, and then with that being said, with this new NBA, he won't get a new job anywhere. The money that he's making now is probably going to be it as a head coach. Yeah. And, he's a guy that I feel wants more power than not to have that power at all. So that to me is why I think it hurts Thibodeau the most, is because he's trying to keep something that really shouldn't be kept at all. They should really dismember it, especially Jimmy Butler, get rid of him, maybe accept that 4 first-round picks that was rumored by the Houston Rockets. Take it and just have the team that you have now, save your career. Maybe you get a job in Orlando or Cleveland, because Cleveland right now has a head coach vacancy open. So if you get fired, just go there.
Let me throw out one last loser. Maybe it's the Wolves organization as a whole. Because if there are young players whose contracts are coming up, like they're expiring, they say, oh, I can come play with Cat, right?
Right.
But then they see this whole debacle and how the Wolves have not taken his side at all, really, outspokenly and backed up Karl Anthony Towns. Maybe it's to the detriment of the whole organization in the sense that people just see that and say, why would I go somewhere where they're not going to back me up if some crazy guy on my team starts calling me out to the whole country? It really might be the Wolves.
Yeah, I mean, just that whole organization. I mean, there's a reason why they haven't made the playoffs until last year for the very longest time, until KG was there.
Yeah.
It's just because they're so dysfunctional, they don't know how to draft, and then they hire these coaches that don't really fit their scheme.
Yeah.
They bring in players that really don't fit the system as well. To me, the Timberwolves, like you said, are probably one of the biggest losers in this whole thing. But I think the real question is going to be, what is the perception right now in the NBA for all these guys? I know we talked a little bit about it just now, but what do you think the whole perception is, like a guy like Karl Anthony Towns versus Jimmy Butler? Like, who do players want to play with more, you think?
It's probably Jimmy Butler still, which is the thing, the reason I can't say he's the biggest loser, even though he does look like, he looks like an ass, really, It's funny and all, and he's going in and giving it to his bosses and stuff, but really he's not being a good teammate or just a nice guy in general. He's making himself look like a bad guy, and but still, like I said, he is friends with all these guys. And really, when it comes down to it, if you want to win a championship possibly or make it to the playoffs, who's the guy you want on your team the most? I think it's Jimmy Butler.
I would say that, but at the same time, I just think that Karl Anthony Towns is part of that group that just plays Fortnite and just live streams. And I think with that group, I think a lot of players would like to play with him. The problem is, even when Jimmy Butler was on Team USA, he just didn't fit that team. When I looked at it, he was more of an outcast on that team in terms of his play style and all that other things. Maybe he's more abrasive than the other guys, and maybe that throws a lot of people off and makes a lot of people angry that he's there. When really they're here for a good time, not a long time. I mean, they're just, I don't know. Jimmy Butler, to me, although he's a great, talented player, and I don't fault him at all for wanting a trade, I just think he went about it the wrong way. Going head on with guys like the Minnesota organization, Tom Thibodeau, Andrew Wiggins, Karl Anthony Towns. By doing that, it just kind of creates this perception that you might not be a player that people want to be around when push comes to shove.
Yeah, I could see it. I think that the Jimmy Butler, just his case in general, really is kind of the one that could go complete opposite directions. There's probably people who see that and they're like, I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole, literally, But then there's maybe a guy like Pat Riley, right? The Heat have been very adamantly trying to go after him, and maybe Pat Riley's that is a guy who wants to win basketball games, And there's just maybe even LeBron sees that and he's like, damn, Jimmy wants to win a game. That's all he wants, right? I want Jimmy Butler to play with me in LA, right? And I don't know. I feel like there's probably people around the league that are like that and see the old school winner's mentality of Jimmy.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with that to a certain extent. But I think another question that has to be asked, and maybe we can answer it here, is what is now the perception of Karl Anthony Towns? Because I know we had Shaq on TNT talking about, he needs to pull his panties up and man up, basically. Yeah. And, the organization, I feel hasn't really backed up Karl Anthony Towns the way that I feel they should as their most paid player, the highest paid player, and also their star player. To me, when it comes to Karl Anthony Towns, I feel you have to coach him a different way, and you have to kind of go about him a different way than others. You can't be so abrasive with him. You kind of have to coach and mentor him in a different style than it would be back in the day. I mean, this is the reason why I talked about Tom Tibbs being one of the biggest losers, because he doesn't know how to change his style, change his abrasiveness. You need a coach that is able to handle and maintain different styles of coaching, different styles of motivating, because we're seeing Karl Anthony Towns right now. He's playing absolute trash.
Not good. I don't know how people would view him, but like I don't necessarily think he needed to go and stand up to Jimmy, but I think like he had to go one of two directions, was to either do that or to play well in this situation, and like obviously he's done neither. Right. Which, I mean, I actually feel really bad for Cat in the situation, because he just seems like a timid guy, and even if you watch him like in the huddle and stuff like that, he's never talking. He's just there. He's a passenger, so to say, amongst like the other stars of the NBA. He doesn't really stack up in star power. Right. But like, if you are a professional, even though he is 22 or 23 years old, like, you do need to make professional steps. And if that means that you need to speak up for yourself and tell this guy who's kind of like essentially bullying you in the workplace, right? Yeah, that's what it feels like. Or you go to your organization and say, hey, if you don't back me up, like, I'm going to request a trade, right? Right. Which is an alternate thing. Like, he probably can't get traded right now because of the contract extension. But he could say, like, I'm just going to stop playing. Yeah, right? I mean, he could pull a Kawhi Leonard and just be like, you know what, I'm not going to play for you guys anymore if this is the way that you're treating me. Yeah. And I think you're right. It does kind of feel that, and I don't want to like over-exaggerate it, but it does kind of feel like it's a bully in the workplace type of situation with Jimmy Butler and Karl Anthony Towns. Because, Jimmy Butler's come out and said before, Karl Anthony Towns, I want you to stop playing video games, essentially, and actually play basketball. And I appreciated that about Jimmy Butler at the time when that story came out. But I was like, yes, Jimmy Butler, you should probably tell them, hey, you guys need to focus a little bit more on basketball instead of the outside things. Yeah. But I just think the way Jimmy Butler's going about it is the completely wrong way to do it. Yeah, certainly. And I think it sounds really funny as far as like a millionaire basketball player, but like his institution around him is really failing him at the moment. Because at this point where he's been there for 4 years or 3 years, whatever it's been, they should know that if an alpha dog style guy is like that with Cat, he really is not the kind of guy who's going to stand up for himself and back that guy down, you know? And if you want Cat to be your guy for 15, 20 years, you need to work within his boundaries. Right, exactly. And they have not done that. Tibbs has certainly not done that. Tibbs is probably encouraging it, honestly. Well, yeah, because he has that like 90s mentality of playing. So I would assume that like his personality is the same way. Yeah, so I think like whatever goes on is just, none of it's correct, right? Really, from any side, everyone is handling it wrong. Like, from the owner down, the owner should just be like, I'm in charge of the team. I own this team, right? Yeah. He says, I want this trade to happen, and it still hasn't happened. Yeah. So what is his power level of the team? If he owns it, he should say, Tibbs, if you don't do this, I'm going to fire you tomorrow. Yeah, well, I feel like that's coming soon, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, it's really it's really a bummer, because they were a team last year that we talked about as like a 4 seed because of the talent level of the team. And then you can just see how much none of them wants to play together and how little functionality there is amongst the locker room. Yeah, it's a damn shame. But that's going to be it for today's video, guys. Put in the comments down below, what do you guys think of this whole situation? What do you guys think of what we said about Karl Anthony Towns, Jimmy Butler, and of course the atrocious Tom Thibodeau? But anyway, guys, we'll catch you in the next video. Remember to hit that subscribe button, also hit that like button. And we also, guys, we need you to help us come up with a name for the podcast. We keep thinking of stuff. We like the charge, but I think we can do a lot better. So if you guys have suggestions, put it down in the comments down below as well. And we'll catch you in the next video. Peace.